the history of Arabs in the Middle East wanting to get rid of the Jewish state precedes the actual declaration of independence of the Jewish state, continues to the day after that declaration of independence with a declaration of war on the Jewish state with the intention of destroying it and killing all the Jews, continues in a history of 77 years of Arabs wanting and trying again and again to destroy the Jewish state and to kill all the Jews in that state, whether it's the Arab countries surrounding Israel, whether it's Arabs living in Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip, and the Jews in Israel and Israel itself pretending that if only we make enough overtures towards the Arabs, they will actually want to be our friends and live side by side in peace with security with us. Uh, that history also precedes the independence, the Declaration of Independence of the Jewish state, and continues to this day. That delusion has cost thousands and thousands of Israeli lives, has actually been a big part of what has prevented an actual situation of peace in the Middle East, like we see peace with the countries that were the enemies of the West in World War II, and has involved Israel arming people who ended up killing Israelis because they thought maybe those weapons will be used and sometimes are used against other Arabs in their war about in their inner wars on what kind of dictatorship we want or what's the best way to kill the Jews. Netanyahu, of course, the current Israeli prime minister, is not he's not an innovator. He's not a he's not a kind of a person to come up with new strategies, new ways. He very much follows this tradition and is following it now. Netanyahu was accused by Avigdor Lieberman, one of the leaders of one of the opposition, a leader of one of the opposition parties, accused of arming clans in Gaza. Some of those clans have been involved in the protests against Hamas, arming them so they can be an alternative to Hamas. And the Netanyahu government has essentially admitted that that is true. Yeah, this is not only Israel repeating the mistakes that not just Israel has made, but the West has been making in its Middle Eastern policy throughout the history, and but it's also a complete misunderstanding that what needs to be destroyed is not the immediate military capabilities of the people currently fighting, but the entire culture, the culture that celebrates these clans as some sort of legitimate source of power rather than, again, something that needs to be destroyed. Hamas and Hamas's enemies within Palestinian society are all Israel's enemies. And if Israel doesn't acknowledge that, and it hasn't, it will never win. This goes back to what I said that Netanyahu, I've said this often on the channel. Netanyahu declared defeat on October 7th when he declared war on Hamas, and that the goal of the war is to destroy Hamas rather than to destroy Palestinian society and the Palestinian culture that has caused these type of attacks to be the greatest thing you can do as a so-called Palestinian. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginzberg, joined by James Valliant. James, maybe this time arming the enemies of our enemies will turn out differently than every single other time in history.
I cannot imagine that the law of cause and effect will operate in any other way than it has always worked. And, Israel is following, I'm in the United States, and the United States has been burned very badly again and again by doing precisely this. In our conflict with the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union still existed and controlled Russia, we armed the Mujahideen of Afghanistan. We actively armed them. We actively armed them. It was Reagan's policy. And, among the better presidents, I mean, not but we've never had a perfect president or anything close in my lifetime. But on the other hand, think of it, even the best of the lot that America has had to choose from, if I can put it that way, he armed the Mujahideen. 20 less than 20 years later, those same forces were responsible for 9/11, 2001, which brought down the World Trade Center in Manhattan, in my country, and killed thousands of civilians. It When you do that, we have here now a classic example of what Ayn Rand called the sanction of the victim. You're not only morally sanctioning them, you're materially arming them. America has repeatedly made this mistake of materially supporting, economically propping up, investing in, and in the most, even more stupidly, arming, actually providing weapons and support to forces that hate us just in order to get another enemy. And this is precisely what's going on here. As you point out, Israel has done this sort of thing before too. And so, yeah, apparently this is the way Israel and America, decides to cut off its own nose to spite its own face. And I can only imagine that it'll have the same consequences. You do not arm the enemy of your enemy. No, 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 no. Because guess what? Now they're armed and they'll be your next enemy. And people, when we talk about moral principles like do not sanction, do not support the people that hate you, as if it's an abstract moral. It is not an abstract moral principle. There's no theory practice dichotomy here. Morality is about the long-term consequences of not adhering to moral principles. And those long-term consequences in this context are almost inevitably deadly. Expect civilians to die as a result of this. Expect the continuation of Palestinian violence because of this. I cannot imagine anything more insane than giving weapons to Palestinians who are happy to be violent right now. Can you imagine? I mean, it's so far insane that all one can say is that Netanyahu is setting up the next October 7th.
Absolutely. And I agree that it's hard to imagine something as insane, but there is competition within the things that Israel does. Feeding Hamas, sending soldiers to their death, like the four soldiers who were killed yesterday going into a building that could have been bombed. And why did they go in? Again, unless you have good reason to think hostages might be in there, in which case I would absolutely say send ground troops. That's why you have them. No, you do it from the air. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, Hadrian invented Palestine. We have a historian with us, but if he invented it, it was he gave that name. It wasn't he invented the current what we call Palestinian people and the state that they
He
imagine
is
they should
just,
have.
yeah, that's just a name. It's really not the people. I mean, well, I mean, you can talk about the people, I suppose, but we're talking about 1900 years ago. But yeah, with the Second Jewish War in the second century, it was the Emperor Hadrian who eradicated the country of Judea, forcibly expelled the Jews from Jerusalem and Judea, way back under the reign of Hadrian in the second century of the Common Era, and gave it a new name, built a pagan temple on top of the now destroyed the temple that had been reduced to the current Wailing Wall that it is today, and in an attempt to eradicate Jews from the area. And to, I think about it. I mean, it was a kind of this is really imperialism, a Roman emperor actually forcing the Jews out of the area. But ladies and gentlemen, that was almost 2,000 years ago. And I just hate to remind people, but this is not about 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago or whatever else we want to do. We're talking about the last 100 years. We're talking about within my lifetime. Okay, Israel is the only civilized country in the area that respects individual rights at all. They are light years ahead of the savages that exist around them. I am a defender of Israel, not because of some 2,000, 3,000-year-old gripe or some religious reason, but because Israel is a civilized country that respects rights. And October 7th, they were the victims of savage, brutal atrocities. That is why I am fiercely for Israel, and that is precisely what's being ignored by Mr. Netanyahu right now. He is he's teeing us up for more civilians to be slaughtered and taken hostage.
Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Raphael, for the super chat. Raphael has a question. It's a Creating Christ related question. question for James, so we're gonna leave it to the end of the episode. But I do want to go to this Jerusalem Post article from a couple of days ago. Yeah, if my reasons for despising Netanyahu haven't been made clear over the past 20 months, and today is 20 months since October 7th. This is now Israel's longest war in its history. Hopefully, this article makes it a bit clearer. The title is Netanyahu confirms Israel is arming clans in Gaza to fight Hamas after Lieberman's allegations. Avigdor Lieberman sat down with Khan's Reshet Bet on Thursday in interview, claiming Netanyahu is arming militias in Gaza. Prime Minister's office and a security source on Thursday declined to refute Israel Beitenu's chairman Avigdor Lieberman's claim that Israel is arming crime families and militias in Gaza to fight Hamas. He made the remarks Thursday in an interview on Khan Reshet Bet. Quote, Israel is working to defeat Hamas through various means as recommended by all heads of the security establishment, the Prime Minister's office said. First of all, okay, let me pause here. And this is, whatever the opposite of the buck stops here is Netanyahu's entire approach to leadership. We are doing what the heads of the security establishment recommend. This is a, cover your ass kind of thing, and on both ends of it, because it's not, they told me to do this. And then, of course, when it doesn't work out, well, we did what they told us. Netanyahu has been doing this his entire career. He did it right after October 7th when he said we can't go after Hezbollah because Biden won't let us. I wanted to do this and that, but my Secretary of Defense wouldn't do that. I mean, can
You know,
you?
the cleaning lady told me I shouldn't be doing this. When you're the head of a state, you have no excuse. You can't blame anyone. You can't blame. I mean, I have been a big critic of America and the way they've been pressuring Israel in various ways, but you can't even use that as an excuse. As an American, I can scream bloody murder at what our administration is suggesting to Israel or pressuring Israel to do. But when you're a head of state, there was a famous American president, Harry Truman, who had a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." Guess what, Mr. Netanyahu? The buck stops here. And you saying that some authority says to do it. No, 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 no. We have plenty of history. We have all the facts we need to make an inductive inference about what is exactly going to transpire as a result. This is what, as you point out, what Israel has long done, what I pointed out, what America has long done, and every single time it results in the worst kind of terrorism, whether it's September 11th, 2001 in my country or October 7th, 2023 in Israel. This is the way to set up a still worse set of atrocities. More civilians to die. I don't care who told you. I don't care if you've got an army of PhDs and every spy chief in the planet telling you to do this. We have enough data from recent history, just in my lifetime, to tell Israel and America this is absolutely counterproductive, immoral, not the way to go. Poor, it's not long-term thinking. It can only have inevitable consequences because it's the Palestinian culture, as you point out. And look, these are armed groups. You're not only, it's not as though you've selected the most peaceful and pacifistic group of Palestinians. Think about that. You're arming people ready for armed. You're loading for bear people who are emotionally loaded for bear to do violence. And oh yeah, our savage enemies will be at each other's throats when we don't attack them. Absolutely. But when we do attack them, they're perfectly willing to you take weapons from one side, take out the enemy. The enemy is not just Hamas here, ladies and gentlemen. Sure, we have to eradicate Hamas. What we have to do is deal with the savage, evil, violent, bigoted, mystic, collectivist culture that is dominant in the Islamic world today, and particularly dominant in the Gaza Strip today. It is those clans. It is these very people. They are on the edge of violence as it is. And you're going to give them weapons? And what do you suppose they're going to do with those weapons once they've even if they do completely eradicate the people who call themselves Hamas? They'll give themselves a new name and they'll start killing Jews and attacking civilization just like Hamas did. Promise. It's almost a guarantee with the law of cause and effect. And this is an object lesson in the importance of long-term thinking and adhering to moral principles. Because I don't know when, I don't know how, I can't tell you with precision what the next atrocity will be, but we're arming violent Palestinians I just want everyone to sort of think about that. What do you suppose the long-term consequences of that might be? Do you need to be a genius? Do you need to be a, and think of it, you're covering yourself behind experts. Well, security experts tell me. No, I'm grateful to Avador Lieberman for letting us know so that we can all see just how suicidal Israel has been and is being in this fight that should have ended more than a year ago, at least. Utterly despicable.
Yeah, Netanyahu wrote a book about fighting terrorism, and I don't remember if anywhere in it it said the leader should never take responsibility for any decision he ever makes, but blame everybody who works for him, in advance of the disasters that are happening on his watch. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, I own an original silver coin from the first revolt. Got it from Spink, London, £8,000, once owned by Nelson Bunker Hunt. James, I'm sure you understood that. Yeah, your
Hadrian
response.
coin, does it have the anchor and fish symbol on it? If you can ask, tell me in the book, Hadrian issued many coins, but he and the Emperor Titus were the only ones who used the image that you can see on my book here. And so I'd just be fascinated to know if it's a anchor and dolphin coin, because there were two Roman emperors who used that on their coins
He says no earlier.
earlier. Oh, fascinating. But what an amazing thing. Ancient coins. You and my wife should get together. She collects, she has amazing ancient, she loves, antique money, as it will, if you will. So get you
Thank
guys
you,
together.
Jeff, for the super chat. We love modern money, and so thank you everybody for the super chats coming in. Uh, okay, let's continue with this article.
Yes.
The security source was, quote, shocked to see the serious and dangerous leak by Lieberman. It seems that there are no limits to the cynicism and populism for the sake of self-promotion and narrow political ambitions. Yes, there is no limit. And yes, I don't know how anybody who, has been around Israeli politics for a while considers Lieberman somebody to vote for, considering that he is every election is super ideological about something, and then the next one super ideological about something else, and he's
So they
now
should keep
in.
this secret policy. So they should keep this self-destructive
Yeah,
policy secret.
so no, that was my next point. My next point is, how are you possibly thinking that this is the problem? Look, in again, we have a person here who is an expert on the law, and it is not me. I know that there is a law against treason, and I'm thinking, you know what? Giving aid and comfort, does weapons count as aid and comfort to the enemy? If
Yeah.
so, that qualifies as treason.
Even there's only one crime defined in the United States Constitution, and that's treason. And it's defined as giving aid and comfort to the actual fighting enemies of the country. And this comes within that meaning. But I don't know if it applies to the government. How can the government itself be treasonous? But if it could be, this is treason. That is to say, it is directly giving not only just aid to your violent enemies. This is giving weapons to people who would love nothing more than to turn around and use those weapons to kill more Jews.
Yeah, PC says funding the UN should be treason. Yeah, yeah, again, if yeah, as James says, if government action could be counted as treason, I think many Western countries' leaders would qualify. Um, okay, the article continues with a quote from this person. These statements must be a glaring red line for anyone who cares about the security of the state, the source said, the source told the Jerusalem Post. Quote, they harm, first and foremost, our soldiers and put our hostages at risk. Israel's interest is not to endanger the lives of our soldiers, but rather to use other means whenever possible. Uh, yeah, the statements. Okay, this thing is refreshing on its own accord, but these statements must be glaring for anyone who cares about the security of the state. Again, if you care about, I don't know how to say this unrepetitively. If you care about the security of the state, you do not arm the people who are the enemy of the state. These clans were not fighting against Hamas when Hamas was in power. There was a clear separation. They let each other exist. They were not fighting against the Palestinians who were joining Hamas on October 7th, who were celebrating on the streets. They might be fighting now because they see an opportunity for a clan type of totalitarianism where you have different types of mini dictatorships that oppress their own people. And how, by the way, if you are thinking of denazification, something that I've said should not be what Israel does, I think everybody should be sent away. But if you are thinking of an occupation or some sort of denazification, how are you going to do that by keeping the culture exactly the same? And anybody in Gaza who does actually want a better life, if such people exist, this is not what you're giving them. You're giving them again, the type of totalitarianism that you accept. You do this whole thing that the left has been advocating for a while, and now that the left is very much in power in the U.S., Trump went to Saudi Arabia and said, we're not gonna preach our values to you. You are accepting the values of that culture. Those values are the reason there was an October 7th, and those values are the reason why these people are still not ending the war that they started.
Precisely correct. It is a matter of their culture. This is what they are taught. This is what they believe. This is the culture. And when Trump goes to Saudi Arabia and says, we don't want you to change your way of life. You do you, we'll do us. And what does that mean? That means women get treated like property. That means that there is no religious freedom, and religious minorities get ghettoized in those Islamic countries. So no, it's despicable, and it is philosophical, and we are running out of options. I was reluctant to say that the entire population of Gaza should be deported, but I can think, especially in light of this news, I can only think there's no other option. The way the West fights wars, the way Israel and America fights wars, is so suicidal that I can only think that the long-term security of Israel requires the deportation, at least of the bulk of the population from the area, just so Israel can survive. In World War II, America, one thing Ayn Rand very much opposed was our material support for the Soviet Union. We gave Stalin weapons in our fight against Hitler. Now, the fight against Hitler was a moral cause. Ayn Rand said we could have used all of the support and all of the weapons we gave to Stalin to fight Hitler ourselves. And the same applies here. Mr. Netanyahu, any weapons you give to these clans should be used by Israel to fight the Palestinians altogether. And what was the result in World War II? We got a half a century of a third of the world living under communist dictatorship. So it is always counterproductive. You do not arm your enemy. You are only asking for the next enemy to, on the lineup. You just, take out the Nazis for sure. But guess what you've done? You've just now armed and supported and propped up the next enemy in line. And that's exactly what's happening here.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Alex says there was a bloody war between the clans in 2020 until 2023. There was a brief hudna, which is some sort of a ceasefire, but they are at war with each other permanently. Yeah, and look, by arming them, you are saying you are accepting their premises and essentially of yeah they have a right to exist. These people who don't think the state of Israel has a right to exist, they have a right to exist. They have a right to their power. Why? Because they used muscle to get that power. Yeah, this is absolutely suicidal. And I just want to read WUB's comment here, who says World War II is not fact or reason for today's politics. I know you don't like to hear it, but history does not repeat itself like you seem to think. I mean, look, it's
Good
not repeating
Lord, man.
itself because we
You
actually
refuse to
fought in
learn
World
from
War II.
history? I mean, there's the old saying, history repeats itself because people refuse to learn from history. No, we did it with the Mojahedin, we did it with the Soviets, and before that, we did it with Germany, frankly. We helped create Nazi Germany without realizing that's what we were doing. No, America has a long track record. There are many, many, many examples. I cannot imagine anything dumber. Now, just right with even without all that history, just think about it in the simplest way possible. Give people who hate you in a violent, murderous way, weapons so they can fight this enemy who is your current proximate enemy. I mean, just really, does it take that much to wrap your head around the fact that you don't give weapons to people who hate you and want to kill you? I mean, my God, man, you don't even need to look at all the history I've pointed out. to point out, to observe that it is suicidal and counterproductive to arm your enemies. We have to take a morally principled stance against Islamic savages. We have to take a morally principled stance against dictatorship. There is no theory practice dichotomy. You're ignoring the long run. We, in arming the Mujahideen, created the Al Qaeda that killed thousands of Americans on September 11th, 2001, 24 years ago. Okay? This is insanity on the
Yeah.
face of it.
And WUB also says Gaza has influential families, though. I heard there is pro and con for that policy. Yes, there's pros and cons for shooting heroin up your vein. The pro is, there's a nice sensation in the immediate moment. So,
That's
I
it.
haven't tried it.
It's a
The
less.
con is you ruin your life. That's the con. So yeah, there is a pro for this. Maybe right now, immediately, this will harm Hamas in their immediate efforts because they will have people shooting at them from all directions, and then you have created the alternative to Hamas.
Look, if these
The
guys got their.
actual thing to do is to destroy Hamas yourself. Israel has the military capability to do that, and then kick out everybody else, and that solves your problem of control of the population.
Look, if the Palestinians got their dream and Israel was wiped off the map and 8 million people were slaughtered, okay, if they got their dream and there was no Israel and no Jews in the area, okay, they would be indeed back at each other's throats. Shia and Sunni, this group versus that, this clan versus the other clan. They believe me, I understand these are savages. And if Israel wasn't in the way, if civilization wasn't in the way, they would be back to their medieval savage barbarism of killing one another uh, over, mind you, ridiculous mystic differences of opinion. Okay, obviously, but that is, they are one thing they do agree on: kill Jews, destroy Israel, fight civilization that opposes their savage Islamist ways. Learn, people, open your eyes.
Yeah, I do appreciate actually that we have pushback on what we're saying as opposed to free Palestine and you Jews deserve to die. And again, these are not trolls. These are people disagreeing with us. So there was another
You've
tweet
stepped it
here
up a
that I
little bit.
wanted to respond to. Yeah, so somebody says, "See, here we go again. Kick out to where?" Uh, my suggestion has always been find a dictatorship that's weak. Dictatorships don't have a right to exist. You can basically do what you want with those regimes. Force them to take Palestinians. I think the Libya idea is great. I don't think Trump actually thought it through and got to the conclusion that it's great, but accidentally he found a very good solution. Libya is a weak dictatorship. It's a massive country. They can easily take the million or so people from Gaza, and you can force them to do it culturally. Savages and savages, I wouldn't say get along because as we see, there's infighting, but it's not our problem anymore. It's not Israel's problem. It's they can't invade from Libya. They're close enough that Israel can go solve any problem that festers there that might cause an issue for Israel. This is not that difficult a thing to do. And
Look,
it is
there's
long term very beneficial. It's a
that's
long term thinking as opposed to the shortest term thinking, which is these savages are trying to kill the savages that right now are trying to kill us, so let's arm them.
Yeah, look, there's no pretty solution here, is there? You guys won't like it. If you guys would have hated it, or you would have complained, bitched, and moaned all over the place if they'd done what we suggested. Level Gaza within days of October 7th. Utterly starve them out and do what we did during World War II with the Germans and the Japanese. Okay, you would have bitched and moaned about that. Okay, if Israel occupies and tries to denazify or control or re-educate them, you'd bitch and moan about that. There is nothing that Israel can do that you would not complain in the most violent terms possible. So what is the option? Israel go away? Israel be destroyed? No, the long-term security of Israel requires, ladies and gentlemen, that you accept a solution that will actually give Israel long-term security. And how many decades do we have to live with this before we realize that the Palestinians will never want to live in peace with Israel? And no Western power will do what's required, like we did in World War II, to do this. That is not realistic given the attitude of our leaders in Israel and America. No. And as Razi points out, the countries, we shouldn't even be recognizing these dictatorships, these theocracies that surround, that are all over the place. And they don't want to take in Palestinian refugees anymore. Egypt certainly doesn't want to take it. Why? Because they want a thorn in the side of Israel. So screw them. Screw them. It is their responsibility because they, in effect, are forcing this to be an unsolvable problem for Israel. Well, guess what? Let it be your problem now and not Israel's. And I agree with you. Take them to a nation, at least one nation away from Israel. Not Egypt, not Jordan. No, 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 no. That's way too close. They can come right back in. And believe me, those countries will let them come right back in so that they can get back to their task of killing as many Jews as they can. No, send them at least far enough so that they can't lob rockets at Israel, which is what Hamas did the minute they took power almost 20 years ago.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, James, Razi, why not Saturn? It has room. One of the things I really hope to live to see is the day that humans, there's a human colony in Mars and hopefully beyond. I don't really think of Palestinians as kind of the trailblazers on that, but look, people have free will. Maybe we'll
Look, it's
be
difficult and
surprised.
expensive enough just to get a few people up there that far. So, and I suppose we could get Elon Musk on it. But the point is that no. I think really it would be deportation would be the most. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. That is actually the most humane of the only sensible options you've got. If you don't want a bunch of Palestinians to die, if you don't want a bunch of Palestinians to live under occupation, then the best solution for them is to send them to another Islamic country. For them. Think about it.
All right, James, I'm going to ask this creating Christ related question, which I, of course, don't understand. And I hope it's not one of the, from time to time you have people targeting you with weird questions. It doesn't look like that, but I don't know. James, you agree with Eisenman that the just in the scrolls is James, the brother of Jesus? Also, could the Jesus have been Judas of Galilee who led a revolt after Quirinius and led the fourth philosophy?
We don't discuss this in the book. In fact, we take no stand on the historical reality, mythicism or historicism about a historical Jesus. I myself, because there's actually a disagreement between me and my co-author on this, I myself believe there was a historical Jesus who was crucified by the Romans. He didn't look anything like the Jesus we read about in the Gospels. That is filtered through a Roman political and cultural lens. That's the very theme of my book. But I do believe there was a Jesus who was thought by the Romans to be a dangerous Jewish rebel, and that's why he was crucified, and crucified under Pilate. So while figures like Judas the Galilean may have factored into the portrait of Jesus, and indeed the Jesus movement might have been itself a rebel movement like that, I do believe there was actually a historical Jesus crucified by the Romans almost now 2,000 years ago.
And somebody in the chat says he looked like a Jew. Everybody knows that. So there you go. Parting thought, James.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an object lesson for us all in long-term thinking and adherence to moral principle. You do not sanction in any way dictatorship. You do not sanction in any way your enemy who violently wants you dead. This is always counterproductive. It has never worked in history. This is so you can say like I can say I can't tell you how or when these militias who now are getting armed, how those arms will now be used at some point in the future against Israel. But guess what? It is almost, people have free will. I guess they could change overnight. The culture could change. But it is, I only say almost inevitable because ideas control history. And the ideas that dominate Palestinian culture, what we call the Palestinians today, Palestinian culture today are mystic, savage, bigoted collectivism that murderously wants to kill all Jews in their quest to destroy anything more civilized than their own savage culture. And so anything that you do to arm think about, you're not just feeding them, you're arming them for the next atrocities and slaughter of civilians to occur. It is almost, as I say, inevitable. Dumb is an understatement.
Somebody in the chat, I just have to read the stuff that entertains me. Somebody in the chat says conservatives killed Jesus. Creating Christ, the first time James Valliant was on this channel was when I interviewed him about the book Creating Christ. That video for a long while was the most watched video on the channel. We've exceeded that number with many videos, but it does have more than 30,000 views, and it is constantly getting views. And I recommend watching. That was like 2 hours, right? So
It
that's
was a long one of our longer programs.
yeah. So yeah, go over there and watch it, and then of course buy the book. Anything else you
And
want
hit
to
me up
promote?
and hit me up with your questions. I'm active on Facebook answering questions almost every day. So do if you do have questions or you want to complain about it, please feel free to do so.
And yeah, you can also ask James questions here, but you do have to send a super chat if you want to almost guarantee that it'll be asked, unless it is actually a troll question. Uh, Thanks, James. Hopefully, we're not going to be talking about the results of this anytime soon. But if we see them, we will talk about them. Thank you, James. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm Razi Ginzberg on X. We'll be back here tomorrow with the Daily Objective. We'll see you then.
Be safe.